All right, November 24, 2023, Thanksgiving. We are fresh off Thanksgiving, rather, here at Common Sense, Ohio. And, you know, while you folks are all enjoying the warmth of your fireplaces home, thinking about leftovers today and whatever football games or holiday movies might be on TV, or if you're crazy enough to go out Black Friday shopping, we are here bringing you Common Sense, your weekly dose, as always, here at Channel 511, Common Sense, Ohio, brought to you by Harper Plus Accounting, where you can have all your accounting and tax planning needs met. I do. Brett does. Norm's the black sheep, but soon, maybe.
He's getting jealous.
He's getting jealous.
He is. He's getting jealous.
I did my year-end tax planning earlier this week to figure out how much I had to pay to the IRS. And while I didn't like the result of that meeting, I was rest assuredly prepared because I had had a prior quarter tax meeting and one before that and one before that. So I had money saved, and I am now more than capable of making my meeting my tax obligations. You should too if you run a small business, or if you just need your transactional stuff done. Harper Plus Accounting can help. If you're in Ohio, you know what this week really is. It's the game. That is, Ohio State and Michigan are clashing on the gridiron tomorrow in what amounts to be the game of the year, really, for purposes if you follow the college football playoff scheme. I don't know. I won't go into commentary about the expansion of the Big Ten. I find that to be sort of absurd. But anyway, that the big game is tomorrow, and it's not, some games are because like the Paul Bunyan Trophy, I think, up in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and some other rivalries around that just have a little bit of history or maybe who knows what. But the Ohio-Michigan rivalry is much deeper than that, Norm. It is we almost went to war with Michigan, I think, back in 1835 over the boundary of the state of Ohio and Michigan, or the states of Ohio and Michigan. And, of course, it all stemmed back to bad cartography by the government. Consistent with my theme, the government sucks at everything it does. And
True.
And I think the Northwest Ordinance established a boundary, and the boundary's in the wrong place. We had Toledo on our map. Michigan had Toledo on their map, and we were off to the races. There was actually somebody injured in the war. Nobody killed. Shots were fired. There were surveyors kidnapped. There's a fascinating history. Andrew Jackson, I think, was president, sent some folks to try to resolve it, but we almost went to war with Michigan, and it was a real thing. I mean, it was like a civil war that was about to happen. We are continuing to fight that war on the battlefield of the Ohio State, the Ohio Stadium, and the Big House up in Michigan, and that's where the game is tomorrow. So tune in. It has a direct impact on what the playoff schedule, what you're going to do on New Year's Day. It will directly impact. So with that, we can get to the normal common sense. I suppose with that history lesson, we can also talk about this day in World War II before I turn it over to Norm and his preparedness. So there's a lot going on in the world that has to do with Israel and the Jews and what's going on over at the Gaza Strip. But it's not just that. So today in World War II, in 1940, the Nazis closed off Jewish ghetto in Warsaw, Poland. And this is a fascinating statistic. Over the next 3 years, so in 1940, there were 350,000 Jews in the ghetto of Warsaw, Poland. Over the next 3 years, that number dwindled down to 70,000. And you can imagine why. That was due to disease, starvation, and the general deportations to concentration camps. So it's probably a good time to give that a little bit of a hat tip and some reflective thought. So this day in World War II in 1940, they closed off the ghetto.
The thing I cannot get over, and I'm not a bit Polish at all by ethnicity, but the thing that I cannot grapple with is that the Allies entered World War II in earnest, with arms, with men, materiel. There was a little bit of a phony war there for the first 6 months or so where England and France really didn't have their act together, so they didn't aggress against Hitler's forces. But that period of time allowed Hitler to prepare for his invasion of France and Belgium. But be that as it may, the thing I can't get over about World War II is that the pretext for the Allies, the U.S. later came in, of course, after Pearl Harbor, but the pretext for for entering World War II to begin with was to free Poland. And at the end of World War II, Poland was not freed.
No.
I mean, isn't that mind-blowing? So England and France decide to commit their young men to fighting Hitler in order to free Poland. They win the war, ostensibly, right? And at the end of the war, the Polish pilots who flew in the Battle of Britain and all the Polish government in exile, they kick all the Poles out of England and basically flip them the bird and say, yeah, we're going to let Stalin administrate your country.
Yeah, are the politics there and how all that happened, it's really fascinating history. And one, it's a far deeper story than we can go into here, but it's worth an exploration, particularly in today's day and age. So those who think that the fascists were far left, the communists were further, sort of a kissing sister on the left, and we basically ceded the field to the communists, to Stalin. And what happened for the next 50 years or so. And
to rub the salt in the Polish wounds even deeper, Stalin invaded Poland.
Yeah.
He was, if you don't want to call it an ally of Nazi Germany, at the time they at least had this non-aggression pact.
Yeah.
And they sat down and carved up Poland in two pieces, one for Schicklgruber and his Nazis, Hitler and his Nazis, and the other half for Stalin and the Soviet Union. And yet he gets rewarded at the end of the war.
Yeah, and there is
with territory he invaded.
And look, I don't know when we knew about this, but I suspect it was earlier than we were letting on. But there was a massacre in Poland called the Katyn Forest Massacre, where Stalin basically goes in and kills everybody above a certain rank, of a certain age in Poland. I mean, it was a slaughter, absolute slaughter.
Right.
And we still cede the field to Stalin. It's just utter insanity. So go read that history. It's fascinating.
Well, and your Warsaw Ghetto story that you started out with here.
Yeah.
So when the Soviet Union, Hitler pushed the Soviet Union way back, they were on the doorsteps of Moscow and Stalingrad and all that. So, they got halfway across Russia before Stalin and his forces, along with American and British Lend-Lease help, pushed Hitler back. So when they got back to Warsaw, to your ghetto, the people in the Warsaw Ghetto, both Jewish and non-Jewish, they're waiting to be delivered, right, by the savior.
The saviors.
Right. Here, oh God, here comes the Russian army. They're going to liberate Warsaw. So what he had Zhukov, the general, do, he told them, Stalin told the Russian commanders, don't liberate Warsaw, because the Germans were in the process of destroying Warsaw. They were blowing up buildings. They were killing the last Jews that they could find. And he's just like,
let him have their fun.
Let him eviscerate the cream de la cream of Polish society and kill them all off. And then he took his prisoners, like you just said, the Polish officers, and it just slaughtered them.
Yep.
Yeah. 20,000, I think it was.
I can't remember the
enormous
number. It's like people talk about Malmedy, the massacre at Malmedy, and some other. But this blows it all away.
Oh yeah, it was like
blows it all away.
It was like 20,000 officers, and they were the intelligentsia, etc.
Mm-hmm. They were all the intellectuals of Poland, and basically killed their culture.
Yes.
That was the goal.
Right.
Now, ironically, as fast forward to the 80s. With when Reagan was finally taking on and seeking legitimately to defeat the Soviet Empire, a lot of the resistance to the Soviet happened in Poland, right? So the Solidarity movement,
Lech Walesa,
and the Solidarity movement. I can still see
a union electrician.
Yeah,
I mean that's what he was.
Which is ironic because that's sort of like the goal of the if you go back to some of the Marxist history, the goal is to get the unions and get the labor movement to support the communist movement, and it was quite the opposite there.
It's quite the opposite.
Anyway, that's we brought it back full circle. Now we should probably get to some. I mean, look, we are deep in the weeds of a little bit of an aside, but let's
affects the way things are right now.
It does, yeah.
Because Poland is kind of like the vanguard now for NATO, as Putin wants to re-erect the old Soviet Empire. So, here we go again.
Here we go again. And you look at it. You look at this. It's like history has this tendency to. Well, maybe I'll say it this way: we've never really resolved World War I. We didn't resolve it, and that led to World War II. We didn't really resolve World War II until maybe the 80s.
Yeah.
And then we didn't really resolve that. Now we're coming all full circle back around. So it is. It's
those ethnic hatreds in Europe. I mean, I know America has all its mixing bowl problems with race, but
because they all flee the nonsense that's going on over in Europe. They all come here where it's safe.
Yeah.
Of course, now they're trying to ruin that. But
the war in Serbia, the former Yugoslavia. I mean, that illustrated for us in modern times, how those ethnic hatreds. I mean, they're still there. Yeah. And now Yugoslavia is, what is it, 3 countries now? I think it's 3 different countries.
And they have, like, as a bigger picture matter, the Europeans have such a different perspective on the role of government, on the role of what's normal in a society. Like they're used to, in a lot of ways, having a jackboot on them. It's like they're used to like a big corrupt government doing things, and they just sort of accept it as what happens. So and when you start talking about fascism versus communism, like their viewpoints on it are completely skewed. A lot of them anyway.
Right.
And they see things differently than we do. Like when everybody says, well, we want to be like Europe when we talk about that here, it's like, no, you don't.
No, you don't.
It's like it's like we are fish and we don't even know we're swimming in the water of freedom here. A lot of our society, like we don't get it. And ask immigrants that come in, like what we have here, and they're like, I can't believe you guys are going to screw it up. Like during the riots. Back a couple summers ago, I was talking to one of the neighboring business owners, and he was I can't remember how old he was, but he had lived in maybe East Germany. He had lived somewhere under the boot.
Yeah.
And he was talking to me about this. He goes, I cannot believe you guys are going through this. We went through this 50 years ago. I cannot believe you're doing it here in the United States. This is not why this is.
I came here to escape that.
Right. I came here to escape this. And
now you're doing it.
All the same nonsense.
Yeah.
Like the terminology, the postmodernist blurring of definitions and class struggle and all this crap. He goes, you're doing it here. This is going in the same direction. We've lived out this play before. Right. And it resulted in 100 million deaths.
Well, you're so on target with that. Another quick example. This is fascinating to me. So, okay, maybe we're drawing this out. But if you talk to a modern German or Brit or a Frenchman, a lot of times you'll hear things. And of course, we can all do that now because there's social media. You could talk to people around the world, and people talk politics. And what's really amazing is when America, tries to draw a bright line, like say with Iran, and say, no, you can't have nuclear weapons. You'll get this blowback from Europeans, this moral relativism that they have, and they'll say, well, you have nuclear weapons, so why can't every other country? And you're just like, oh my God, because we're not going to use it aggressively? Yeah. Maybe that's a reason.
But then they have to morph that though. And redefine aggressive, and they go back to what, like American colonialism or like Western colonialism,
1619 or something.
Right, it's
crazy.
So stupid.
Yeah, it's so stupid.
Yeah. Like we don't start wars.
No.
Right, and even when we get involved in wars and finish them, then we get the hell out.
Yeah.
Just read the history.
Unless they ask us to stay, like Japan and Germany.
Like Japan and Germany, right?
Yeah, we haven't done anything like that for 400 years.
Right.
400 years.
Right. We've never.
No,
never started a war in Europe.
We don't have a first. We don't have a first strike plan at the Pentagon to use nuclear weapons. It doesn't exist. We have a response plan.
Mm-hmm. Right? Does anybody think that Hamas would hesitate for a second to launch a nuclear device at the West if they could?
I mean, come on.
It's like, would they hesitate for a second?
Right.
No.
Of course not.
And you have these discussions, as you say, because these folks, have had that boot on their neck. And they look at government, in this kind of paternalistic way. Like, well, it's a game of student council government at the UN, and we'll just move these pieces around the board. But like, it's inconceivable to them that we can have things because of moral superiority, which we have over Iran.
Yes.
And I don't mean the people of Iran.
No, the
I mean
philosophy, the governmental philosophy.
The governing philosophy of Iran.
We have freedom.
Is poisonous.
Right. We have freedom. They can come here and spout all the nonsense they want, and they're not going to go to jail. If we went there and spouted all of
We'd
our
be hanging from cranes.
Like not only prison, but hanging from cranes.
Hanging from cranes.
With signs on our bodies. Right. You know, and that's what they do. And
that's what they do. Right.
Anybody who thinks that is morally equivalent is absolutely living in La La Land.
Exactly.
Just living in Never Never Land.
And this is common sense Ohio.
And this is common sense Ohio. Now, it's interesting because Marx said in a different context, the capitalistic society contains the seeds of its own destruction. And he was saying that, eventually the lower classes would revolt and overthrow and this utopian nonsense would take over, which of course it didn't happen. It didn't happen in Italy. It didn't happen in Germany. They had to force it. But in some respects, he is right. And I have to think this through some more, but he's right not for the reasons he said he was right. He's right because we're free, and we're free to let in this sort of dangerous ideology into our country, into our schools, into our society.
What's Musk called mind virus?
Mind virus, yeah. So, the Marxist doctrine when you're a kid sounds awesome, right? We can all just live in this happy utopian world. Sure. Everybody will have everything.
Walden's Pond.
Let's
all smoke a doobie and just chill.
And just hang out. And, of course, it's not what he did. His mom was bringing him donuts and cookies in the weekends. But anyway, it was like he was getting care packages. We're talking about Thoreau. Anyway, read that too. It's like it's all been completely whitewashed.
Yeah.
But we have a system that permits political speech, contrary to our ideology, and because of that, we haven't stopped the idealism or the ideology of the Marxist agenda to infiltrate our schools and everything else. And our kids think it's okay. They think socialism is great, and they think that capitalism is evil, and they think all these things, and they've been taught this. Yeah. And we have permitted that. We being the United States with our freedom of expression.
We don't counter it with counter-programming. No. The schools have just given up on teaching real American
They've been
history.
taken over. It's not given up. I mean, it's been completely hijacked. Yeah,
that's right.
But
we're the embodiment of free will.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah, right. We have created a system based on a Western system. That's an excellent point. Like we are founded on the notion of free will, which is a very Judeo-Christian value structure.
Right. And it just is. You choose what you want to do, but there are repercussions if you choose the wrong way, but you're allowed to. And
now these kids have been taught that bad choices are not their fault. And their their consequences that result from bad choices, well, their fault's not the right word. You make a bad choice because we all do, right? We're imperfect.
Yeah.
But that's how you learn incrementally throughout your life, throughout generations.
So they don't create their own safety net. They expect one from the government to protect them from every adverse calamity that even are self-imposed ones.
Right.
Like I picked the wrong major in college. Now I own $200,000 that I have to repay on basket weaving.
And I can't, my income won't support it. So that's not fair. The government should fix that.
That's the government should
It's a very European thought.
Right.
And
why isn't there a basket weaving job waiting for me?
Right.
It's like, duh. Do a little research.
Why this is sort of this is one of the, I think, the catalysts of how Marxism took hold, because those people get their degrees in whatever nonsense there is.
Yeah.
They stay in the university level and they teach the nonsense to the next generation, and that continues.
And there's no jobs.
And then
that.
You've got like the plumber, or the electrician, or the concrete guy, or the guy who had an enterprising idea to build tables to put in Starbucks, or whatever it would be, who has become a millionaire.
Right.
And these people, the universityites, and then we're going back to Italy. And there's some history here on Marxism that's interesting. I'm not going to go into the depths of it, but there's a theory that those people sort of look upon the working class folks who not only did not revolt, but actually ended up making, like a lot of those guys became millionaires, like self-made.
Yeah.
But the intellectuals in the universities didn't like that, because they feel like they're smarter. They should be the ones with the money. This isn't fair, because it goes back, I guess, Brett, to what you're talking about. Some of this Judeo-Christian value system of envy, right? And it's like we are imperfect, and envy is one of those things we try to avoid, and we don't want to compare. We all have our own free will to do what we want.
Yeah, Milton's Rings of Hell.
Yeah,
you can be virtuous right?
Yeah.
Or you can sin, and here's the consequences.
Here's the consequences, right?
You know?
It's a very, very fascinating philosophical discussion that we should probably abandon for now.
Well, we were talking a little bit about football, and I have to say, other than I know that they're ranked in the top 3, Michigan and Ohio State, I don't know much about. I mean, I just know they're both really good football teams, and the Michigan coach is not allowed to be on the field because he did something way worse than whatever Tressel did, but somehow Michigan doesn't get punished at the same degree that.
Well, not yet.
You know.
Hold on though. So
there's more to come.
Ohio State didn't get punished in real time. A lot of that was after the fact.
Yeah, they took away their championship.
They took away because I went down to the Sugar Bowl that year. Was the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans? I think it was. I went down to the Sugar Bowl and watched Ohio State defeat Arkansas, and that was later stripped of them.
Yeah. It didn't happen.
Like it didn't, yeah.
Right, exactly.
I mean, there's a big asterisk that whole season.
Jury, you shall strike what was just said. Yeah, right.
Because
you didn't win. There was no Big Ten victor that year, I guess, officially.
Right.
I mean, it's
great. I went to whoever was next in line, I guess.
Yeah, it's true.
But, it's like, but Ohio State was not doing anything, I don't believe, that would have impacted directly their performance on the field.
Yes, right. We weren't cheating another team.
Right.
For example.
Correct.
And I am flabbergasted by this sign stealing thing. And you know what's even better? We haven't talked about this on the show. It's great. When I saw it on Facebook, I actually texted a buddy of mine in Michigan, and I was like, did this really happen? And there's this coach like wearing sunglasses and the other team's hat and sweatshirt. Yeah. And he's on the sidelines, I think, of Central Florida. I can't remember what the team was.
Yeah.
But he's on the sidelines, like in disguise, like blending in with the other team. And I'm like, this is awesome. He should not be punished for that. He should be rewarded for
that. Right.
I mean, that's like a military mission. Like in World War II, it's a life-risking mission to go steal information from the other side.
And I guess to say Harbaugh had no inkling of this
bullshit.
Is so absurd.
Come on.
Because there were 13, as I understand it, there was a posse of 13 of these people doing the sign, detection or whatever they were transcribing the signs. So there's 13 people, at least one of which was an assistant coach, and all of the plane tickets and all of the costs for this were charged to the football program's credit card.
Right.
So it's wait a minute, this was official then.
Right.
Yeah. If Harbaugh didn't know, it's because he didn't want to know, and if he didn't want to know, that means he knew.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Exactly right. Not knowing is knowing.
Yes,
that's right.
And you're the guy in charge. So look,
right.
I mean. And it's like all of a sudden your defense can stop all the offensive plays. And I don't know the Ramifications. I don't know how successful the sign stealing philosophy was, and how much it contributed directly to their wins. But
they claim like, okay, if you could decipher what the next play is, there aren't enough seconds to transmit that to the team on the field. Well, whatever.
Then why do you do it?
Well,
exactly.
And
why do you want to know it?
And I went through it in my mind, thinking, it's like I'd hate to be those players. Coach, you don't have enough confidence in us to play the game that you've got to cheat for us.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
humiliating.
Think about it. It's humiliating for those players.
I agree.
And I will say this: I played offensive line in high school and college, and everybody always says, especially about the last 2 years of the Ohio State-Michigan game, where Ohio State's sort of been dominated at the line of scrimmage, and people are saying their line sucks. These guys are no good. They just got manhandled on the line. And my response, I didn't know anything about sign stealing at the time. My response is always this: there's a coaching problem for Ohio State because these athletes on the Ohio State offensive line are not that bad, right? In fact, they're top tier. A lot of them went off to the NFL to play.
Right.
So you have to wonder. And when I played offensive line, you have a lot of disadvantages. You're not allowed to grab onto the jerseys like the defense is. You're not allowed to.
It's a very difficult job.
It's a different set of rules. And the one advantage you do have is the play and the snap.
Yeah.
So the snap count, the play. Now, here's the problem. If the defense knows the plays or has a good idea of where it's going based on scouting, based on coaching, based on whatever, it is impossible at that level, I would surmise, to block somebody and keep them away. I mean, because it's impossible.
Yeah.
Because like head to head, the defense has an advantage, all things being equal.
Yeah.
But if the offense knows the play and knows the snap count, well, then they get it sort of evens the playing field.
That's right.
But head to head, it's favored defense because the defense they don't have the same rules about how they play.
Right.
They're allowed to hold. They're allowed to throw you down. They're allowed to. They can veer in a direction that the play is.
Right.
And the offense is a step behind and can't get there ever. You're never going to make that
block. That's
block.
why in a practice drill, if it's one offensive lineman against one defensive lineman, and they have somebody in the backfield holding the ball, the defense, all
defense should always win that.
Should always win that. All things being equal,
Yes.
because you could just grab the guy's jersey, throw him to the ground, sidestep him, swim through him.
You don't have to read anything.
No.
Yeah.
You should get to the guy with a ball.
Yeah. Now, I mean that doesn't always happen, but you're right. Generally speaking, is the defensive lineman has the advantage.
Oh yeah. Well, staying with a football theme, have you guys heard about this Dave Portnoy guy? Bet $120,000 on the Bengals last weekend, it would have been Thursday night football. And he's saying the Bengals lied, and I don't think that has been yet decided by the NFL. They're investigating. But he is saying the Bengals lied. They knew Joe Burrow had a wrist injury prior to the game, and there was some kind of video showing him wearing a brace before the game, getting off a plane or out of the hotel or something. And, of course, famously, he was tackled, got up, couldn't throw the football anymore before halftime. So the Bengals lost the game. This Dave Portnoy, who owns Barstool or something like that, some betting forum or
platform.
Okay.
It's the online
chat room thing, something.
It's not. You're right. It's Barstool is like it started as like a podcast or something.
Yeah,
it's a media.
So he owns that. He's some kind of big commentator on sports, and he said on Twitter that he's suing the Bengals over this, that they knew, and that therefore people wagering on the outcome of the game were denied this information that otherwise is required. Somehow the NFL has an injury report that the teams must honor before each game. Who's injured? Are they going to play? Are they not going to play? Blah, blah, blah. What kind of injury?
I'd like to read that rule. First of all, this is an interesting legal discussion because say the NFL has a rule that says there has to be a disclosure of injuries by X minutes before the game.
Yeah.
All right. I'll take that as true. I don't know that to be true. Let's just say that's true.
That's his assertion.
Okay.
Now, the question is, say Brett making bets is denied that information because the Bengals broke the rule.
Yeah, so Brett's a third party.
He's a third party.
What is their third party duty?
Is he a third party beneficiary such that he has a cause of action in breach of contract or against the Bengals? And I think no. There's a lot. I don't think he has standing to challenge that.
But I wonder what the relationship is between these betting companies and the NFL, because you're seeing the online betting.
Yeah.
It's now rampant.
Well, and
you're seeing logos right next to each other. So
they have official.
There's a marriage somewhere there.
Official partnerships.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there might be another contract in there somewhere.
Yeah.
That would give you betting. Or sorry,
No, you're fine.
There might be a contract somewhere where it gives people some standing to sue. But as a practical matter, it's like, look. Welcome to the world of betting.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm more concerned about is the action on the line. It's like, then what happened? Like, did they not do it for reasons aside from not just wanting to win the game?
Who else is benefiting from that lack of knowledge?
Was there a big line in Vegas or something, or was there a lot of action on the game such that they wanted to change the outcome of the game?
And what will be the reason for playing an injured player if they knew he was injured, go in, and he injures himself even more? That's kind of a stupid move.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Don't get me going on Bengals management.
Yeah. I mean, come on.
I think Al Michaels said, if you watch that game to the bitter end, and it ended rather, it got better as the game went on, but even without Burrow in it. But the Al Michaels said that the Bengals had played on prime time, meaning Monday Night Football, or the featured Sunday game nationally, or Thursday night, or whatever it is, Tuesday night, or out of these halo games that are showcased by the NFL for national broadcast, out of 25 times in franchise history, the Bengals have lost 24. It's just unbelievable. Like, so why are they on TV? This is what
or at least a spotlight game.
If I were in Monday Night Football and they said, "Hey, let's do the bang,"
but the Browns, Norm, the Browns are even plagued by these injuries are hanging in there. This season.
They are right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have that incredible defensive player. His name's stripping a gear, but the Browns are really.
All right, so we've managed to kill like a half an hour without talking about anything.
Well, I don't know about that. Okay, so I'll talk about something that seems a little bizarre, but it kind of feeds into how federal regulation works. So you guys may have remembered that the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, division, I guess are part of Treasury, or they were. Now they're part of the Justice Department. Whatever. The ATF promulgated under Biden this rule against what they call short-barreled rifles, right? Now, you can go buy essentially a legal sawed-off shotgun. It's called the Judge. It's a 410 gauge pistol shotgun. Yeah, perfectly legal. Don't need any kind of special permit. It's not class 3. Blah blah, and it ain't 16 inches long.
No, it looks like a giant 44 mag revolver.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you can buy that.
It's a revolver that holds 410 shells.
Yeah, but if you're Randy Weaver and take a full length shotgun, a 410, let's just say for same caliber, let's argue just for sake of discussion, and you get out your hacksaw, right, and you turn it into effectively that gun, then it's a class 3 weapon, and like you go to federal prison. So anyway, the judge, not a judge, a federal judge has thrown that rule out because it is so confusing. Apparently, there are all of these factors that consider whether or not a pistol with a brace for people that are handicapped or people who just need
an arm brace.
An arm brace, right? It was called a .922 rule. And there were all these factors about whether a brace could be attached to that pistol and what kind of design of brace and all this stuff. And you're like, your regular hobbyist firearms owner could not figure this out. Yeah. It was an absurd. The reasons for why you could do it legal and which ones were not legal made no sense to anybody.
The firearms regulatory scheme is nothing short of absurd.
It's absurd.
I have defended a number of these cases, and it is like you said, Norm. It's a great jumping off point to talk about the administrative state and what's evolved as a result of it. So the ATF promulgates rules, and rules aren't statutes. So the difference would be this: a statute is Congress going in, debating on the floor, or the General Assembly locally here in Ohio, debating on the floor what a law should be. So most people think that's the thing. I'm just a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol. That's what you would think it would be, right? But it's not. A regulation is somebody writing a rule,
right?
And it's not voted on. It's just a promulgation of a rule, and they sit under the executive branch. So they would some bureaucrats sitting at the discretion of Joe Biden or Donald Trump or whoever happens to be president at the time is writing rules. And, in Ohio, that would have been the director of health during COVID times. It was Amy, or what was the
nut.
Yeah. I mean,
she was
way in over her head. And they were just, but it wasn't really she writing the rules, but she was responsible. But so they're just writing rules. And these rules you can imagine how they become politicized. So if you don't have to vote on it, you don't need a majority, you can just promulgate rules. Yeah. And not only that, there's something called tech branch of the ATF, and tech branch gets to go decide what the hell the rules mean.
It's unbelievable.
And they go through these administrative things. And what's even worse is you can be prosecuted for crimes for violating the rules.
Right.
And this is where it gets really confusing because, like you said, if you go try to read the rules on what you're allowed to do, say, gunsmithing, it's not exactly obvious.
No, not at all.
And maintaining an FFL, while it's not that difficult, it's not rocket science, it is procedurally a pain in the ass. And everything booked in, everything booked out. You got to keep all these numbers. You can go, and a lot of it's done online now. Yeah. But when a lot of guys who say, I'm going to go start a gun store, and we're going to also do gunsmithing, it's like you have to keep up on that crap. And if you don't, it's a crime.
Yeah.
So what they're doing here is they're sort of bending the rules in real time and interpreting the rules in real time, and then using them to push an agenda. And both sides do this, right? This is like, you can just imagine if you don't have to answer to the General Assembly. This is why I hate the administrative state of government, because it becomes this giant gray area governmental political power. And,
up until this rule, which has now been set aside by federal court. Of course, they're appealing it, Biden and the ATF. But up until this rule came out, you would go to a gun store or go online or go to a show, and there would be hundreds and hundreds of these braces that you could click on to the back of a rifle or a pistol, right, to steady yourself. And they were under the auspices of really the, people with physical disabilities, like how.
Sure. And of course,
how are they supposed to use a firearm without a brace?
This is the problem when this is the problem when people try to legislate or promulgate rules with the eye towards their utopian existence.
Right.
They forget about the one thing, Brett, that you brought up: human nature. Right. Human nature. We are imperfect.
So do you know what you were supposed to do? And this is human nature. So when this rule passed, and this is like 2 years ago, what you were supposed to do, so you bought it legally, right? When Trump or Obama were presidents, right? You could buy it when Obama was a president. You buy one of these braces, Advances or your favorite store, and you buy this brace. What the ATF said you had to do was three things, one of three things. You had to either destroy it, throw it away, or you had to take it to the ATF or your local police department and basically surrender it. Or you had to pay the $200 Class 3 tax, right, and get investigated, background check, all that kind of stuff. The $200 to keep your $59 plastic brace.
Yeah, it's such insanity.
So what do you think guys did? Some guys didn't even know they had one. It's out in the garage. They bought it 3 years ago, and they decided, it's a piece of crap. I don't, I'm not going to use it. And they put it out on the shelf, next to the volleyball.
They don't even know they
don't even know they got it.
So now what always bothers me, here's what bothers me about, these are brown shirts, right? This is going back to the fascists. These are brown shirts. So now the question is, Norm, you bought one of these devices, or Brett, you bought one and sitting in your garage and you forgot all about it. And we'll just make you completely innocent. And then you get a knock on the door from the brown shirts that say, oh, by the way, we have a record that on, January 20, 2015, you were Advances and you made a purchase here of this brace. We just want to find out what you did with it. And you're like, I don't remember that.
Yeah, and the ATF,
we got it right here. You did. So we're just going to look around your house if that's all right and see if we can find it.
And Steve, this is real. The ATF is doing no-knock requests.
Yeah.
To see
for braces.
Yes. So now,
no knock.
Now they're not barging in the house yet.
No, they're calling knock and talks.
But they're. Thank you, Steve.
But it's a cousin.
Knock and talks.
They're on the porch, and that's pretty intimidating. Guys, shows you a badge.
So now you're
you mind
like,
if I come in? Well, actually,
I sort of do.
Yeah.
So now, Brett, you're put on the spot, and you're like, whoa, did I get rid of that thing? Do I have it? Maybe I have it. Or maybe you did something nefarious. Maybe you're like, screw them. I'm just going to hide it in my safe. Now, what rules and what authority and what rights do they have to come into your house and start looking for these things? And I can tell you right now, they're going to start developing this area of law that's already sort of fledgling developed called administrative searches. And, these are like, I like to think that our current court will put the boot down on this under the Fourth Amendment, but it puts you in a very precarious situation where we're not used to, as Americans, getting back to this, to having government agents knock on your door and ask you about things. I mean, it's very, very intimidating. We don't like it. We don't want them on our doorstep. Yeah. And this is where, on the right, I always used to argue with my buddies. They're like, man, I don't do nothing wrong. They can come and, they should be able to stop cars on on 23 and search them. I don't, have all the checkpoints. Let's stop this fentanyl problem.
I don't have anything to hide. That's what you hear from.
That's what you hear all the time. I was like, yeah, what about the corrupt cop?
Right.
And then it stops them in their tracks. What about Buford Pusser showing up and all of a sudden they find in your safe next to your guns a small bag of cocaine?
I'd say Buford's a bad example, but I know what you mean.
You know what I mean.
You're right. I know what you mean.
Yeah, Buford, in theory, was trying to do the right thing. Right.
But a cop with a throwdown, for example.
Cop with a throwdown, or a cop with an agenda that doesn't like you, Norm, because you've got a business that competes with his wife's business. Right. You don't think this stuff happens at the local level? Of course it does. Right. This is why we have those protections in place. We have the protections in place not to protect the guilty people, but to protect the innocent people.
Yeah, so throw down people if you don't know. So, like, if you talk to an old-timey cop, like from the 50s and 60s, they typically somebody in the squad had one with a serial number filed off, just a handy revolver that if they didn't shoot somebody and it wasn't clearly righteous, he was armed. He had a gun. And they throw it down.
They throw it down. Yeah.
That's what a throwdown is.
And look, people would say, well, that stuff doesn't happen anymore. We've transcended from that, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
It's like, well, wait a minute. Then. The reason we got rid of that kind of stuff, or the reason we were able to stop that kind of stuff, is because of the rights that you're now willing to give up. And even if your guy that you have in charge, we had those socialists in here and I was debating him. I was like, listen, even if I give you that the person you're going to put in office with all this power to engineer the entire economy is able to do it, which is complete nonsense. They're not going to be able to do it. But even if I could trust them to do it.
A benevolent dictator.
Who's going to take that person's place? And how do you trust the next guy?
Exactly.
And the guy after that. And the guy after that.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And then if he's got that much power, you don't think that there's a target on that guy's back? Because who wouldn't want that much power? Because we all know, Lord Acton, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Everybody wants power.
Right. And our table in this country was set by George Washington, who was offered essentially a monarchy at the end of his term. Like they were like, well, who can succeed you? Like who's going to take your place?
Who's as great as you?
Who's as great as you? And he said, hey, man, I am going back to the farm. I'm done.
I'm going to go travel around.
The country's already falling apart.
Which is fascinating. You know what he does after that, though? It's like he goes back and it's like he's all done and he just puts on his normal clothes and he just started touring around. And he would like stay in people's houses. Like he would tour around the bush or the wilderness and like come upon a cabin and like hang out with them for a couple of days. I mean, it's really sort of interesting.
He really was a great man, but like, I mean, just think of that. Like he could. I mean, most people, when offered that kind of unlimited power,
would not turn it down.
They would have said, well, yeah, I guess you're right if we have an election.
And even Washington, who shows up like when they're trying to pick the general, who showed up in his complete military uniform, dusted it off from like the what was the war, I forget the war, the French and Indian War. He dusted off his military uniform and then shows up as they're trying to pick generals in his full uniform.
Right.
It's like Old Maid, when he used to play.
His colonial uniform at that.
Pick me.
Right.
And they did, of course. But it's seemingly inconsistent with that. He turns down the monarchy.
It's insane.
8 years or 10 years later.
Wow.
We should talk about the Carter administration a little bit. So Rosalind Carter passed away.
Yeah.
And, I have to say, Jimmy Carter's probably my favorite ex-president of all time. I mean,
I don't know.
Well,
look,
I'm not
at least
talking,
he had a brother that had beer.
I'm not. So, yeah, I actually went to Plains, Georgia when Billy had his brewery down there.
And I do love peanuts.
And I do love peanuts.
Yeah.
But Carter, as a former president, was asked to admit, to monitor elections like in South America, and negotiate with the North Koreans. And so he made a mess of some of those things.
He was soft. He's always been soft.
But what I'm thinking of mainly is his general ethical behavior and his humanity.
You can't take that from him.
And the idea that, how long was there?
He was a benevolent dictator. Like he believed that he could usher. He was one of those guys. He did it all with good faith. Thinking that all the policies would work.
Yeah, and that rescue attempt in Iran, I'm not going to lay that on him. I mean, some helicopters ingested sand in a sandstorm, and we didn't rescue our hostages.
You can't lay the disaster of the rescue attempt on him necessarily, but you can lay some of the problem on him, or a lot of the problem, and what caused all that to begin with. It was weak world. It was a weak world presence.
No question about it.
That permitted that to happen.
The Russians
a lot like what's going on now.
Well, exactly. The Russians had invaded Afghanistan on his watch, and our policy reaction was, we're not going to go to the Olympics in Russia. So we're not going to go to the Moscow Olympics. Yeah. That was our response to the invasion of a foreign country.
Remember how down, like I was young. I mean, I was born in 1970 and I was very young, but I remember, the gas lines and the misery and all, like we were down as a country.
It was called the malaise.
The malaise, yes.
Yes.
And,
and he gave a speech, which was basically, hey, turn down your thermostats in the winter and turn them up in the summer because America's not really as great as what we thought. Yeah,
American exceptionalism doesn't exist. We're just poor, dumb people that can't get anything done. But then Reagan comes in and changes it almost overnight.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it did.
With attitude.
Right.
Right.
With attitude and strength.
We're going to make America great again.
Yeah.
And then Trump stole this Trump saw a good slogan when he saw one, so he reutilized that.
But that's a good example too, because to me, I got the phrase "Make America Great Again," but we were not in that extreme. We weren't at a Carter-esque when.
Oh, I think we were. I think we were. Yeah, I think we were.
Well,
but the problem
we didn't
is,
have gas line. I mean, I'm talking on the description you gave.
I think I know what Brett means. So Carter was a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. He was a nuclear scientist trained by Admiral Rickover.
I didn't know that.
He was a patriot. He was a patriot.
He loved the country.
He loved the country.
Sure.
That's a different. So
I think you're right. So
that's what I think.
We're agreeing. We're saying two different things.
Oh,
I think at the time Trump takes over, Obama had pitched this 8 years of America is sort of an evil existence. We have to make it different. We have to We have to what do they always say? We're going to remake America in this different mold of
it's more of
equity.
a mindset than it is an economic turmoil.
We had the jackboot on us with Obama, and you can see as soon as Trump took it off, like we flourished.
Oh, no
true,
question.
True.
Right.
We flourished.
Yeah.
And but I think you're right. It wasn't quite the same.
It wasn't quite the same.
But it was, I think, even worse in different ways. It was more like,
sure, yeah.
There was this. It's what we were talking about. Kids are being taught that America is bad and evil, and capitalism is horrible, and there is no American exceptionalism.
It kind of started during the Vietnam War protests, and it has been there
it was
ever
all
since.
those people took over the universities.
They did,
and they're communists,
right?
And
yeah.
It's like when we had those people down here for their fundraiser, and they're like, hey, they looked at me afterwards, like smiling, like, oh yeah, now I'll be convinced. And they're like, hey, see, what'd you think? And I said, yeah, I got it. You guys are a bunch of communists. This is nothing new.
Yeah,
like this is insanity.
Yeah,
they could not believe it. I was like, do you want to debate the value? It's like, just give me an example of where this has worked anywhere in the history of the world, and then we can talk.
Yeah. Oh, a classic example is one of the Vietnam, bombers. Involved in a courtroom shooting, involved with a police killing, was Angela Davis, and she's on the faculty of in California of the law school faculty, and you're just like, wow, actually, she probably should be in prison.
A lot of those people. No, look, there's an organization called the Lawyers Guild, and these are all communist organizations. And you can say McCarthy went way too far, and he did, but he understood what was going on here on some weird level. He got it. Like, these people want to take down the country.
Yeah. Well, Alger Hiss was a real thing.
Yeah, they want to take down the country from within, and go listen to the interviews of the old Soviet expats talking about how they had an agenda to do just this. Talk to the old KGB guys. But anyway,
what I did.
Go ahead.
This follows our Christmas. Now that we're in Christmas season,
we are. Yeah.
So and it's always cool to drive around the holiday lights, and you're seeing
some people still do a big deal.
Yeah, they're a big deal. So, but you're not going to see this happening in the city of Wauwatosa in Wisconsin, because
Paul Ryan's old district, by the way.
The city administrator has instructed city workers that they should avoid using red and green in public spaces to celebrate Christmas.
Why is that?
Instead, top city officials are urging them to decorate counters with purple and blue and snow people, what the administration appears to be calling snowmen. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The email went out from deputy.
Oh, we can't say snowmen anymore. I was like, what the hell does that mean?
No. Went out from the deputy city administrator, Melissa Cantatero Weiss. It also notes that the city administrator, James Archimondo, is on board with the instructions as well.
But what's the problem with red and green specifically? What's unequitable about that?
They're trying to be, in our ongoing efforts to foster a more equitable and inclusive community. We believe it's crucial to be considerate of how we decorate public spaces during this season. Okay, so this actually fills two buckets. One, we have to do something.
Right.
Okay? And the second is the worst use of a Bible verse by the mayor.
We were talking about this yesterday.
Yeah. So anyway, her text, her memo says, city employees, as the holiday season approaches, Mr. Archimondo and I ask that you take some time to reflect on commitment to create a welcoming and inclusive environment for all residents and visitors to our buildings, as well as our coworkers. At City Hall, in particular, December is our busiest month, and So everything with city is going to have to be non-red green. It has to be very, very non-Christmassy because we have other faiths. And to that end, we kindly ask the departments refrain from using religious decorations or solely associated with Christmas, such as red and green, when decorating public spaces. Instead, we encourage you to opt more neutral and inclusive decorations. Winter wonderland, lights and greenery, festive, to watch what you're doing with that. Also, northern lights. Let's draw the inspiration from Aurora Borealis and incorporate colors like blue, green, and purple.
Let's make Christmas pagan, in other words.
So the mayor comes out and says something. You may have heard that certain media outlets, especially Wisconsin Right Now and Daily Mail, are stoking controversy over an email from our deputy director. This morning I received a score of emails from people, most not from our city, who have expressed outrage. He wanted to respond that, the policy you mentioned is not imposed by the Common Council or me, blah, 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 blah. So he goes into, he says, my understanding is that our administrators are trying to minimize the discomfort that some people feel when they come into a government building for a government non-religious functions. So he then quotes Matthew 25:15-22, that render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and unto God what is God's. I have no clue what that means to this whole scenario.
Is he saying that Christ? So I think it's Matthew 22:15 or 17 through 21.
So he goes, our job as a city government is to provide municipal services. There's no Republican way to plow the snow or a Democratic way to pick up the garbage. Likewise, there's no Christian way to mow the grass or no Jewish or Muslim way to pave our roads.
So what he's trying to say is
my God,
we should separate church and state.
He is.
That's what he's trying to say.
But total misuse of that verse.
Sure.
That has nothing to do with that.
So my reply is,
oh my God,
let's no longer make Christmas a national holiday.
We might as well go that direction.
Well, why? Okay, so but see, this is what the left would never permit. They would never permit us clawing back a free day off for the.
Well, look, we're flying rainbow flags over the freaking White House.
Right.
What's different about this?
That's a religion.
What's different about this? So,
anyway.
Look, render under Caesar what is Caesar's and render under God's what is God's. I mean, he's saying sort of, I think he's sort of using that generically to say there should be a separation of church and state. But I encourage everybody to go read that.
Exactly.
Read that whole chapter. It's phenomenal. Read Matthew.
And understand.
Just read Matthew.
And understand what was going on at that time and why they were trying to trick Jesus at that point in time. What that answer meant.
Yeah.
That was key.
It was incredibly witty.
I mean,
exactly.
Do these people think that the Wauwatosa snowplow trucks go around Muslim homes and go around Jewish homes and they bypass, atheist homes? No, they don't.
And I wonder what they do at the first snowfall because it's a virgin snowfall. So I mean, we have to approach that much differently.
That's great. They are creating a controversy where none exists.
None exists.
They're just making up a controversy, and people have now concluded that these kinds of officials really want controversy. They really want division.
Well, the irony,
I think so.
Because they cultivate it.
The irony is they're trying to tamp out Christianity, right? I mean, look, there's an agenda to say that Christianity should be no more important than any other religion,
or not even
part of
anything.
And he's relying on the Christian ethics to make the argument, right? He's relying on a Christian verse to make the argument to get rid of Christianity.
They always do that.
They always do.
do
our
that.
morality, the things that they rely on for their quote equity.
Right.
The fundamental basis from that is the Judeo-Christian value system.
And the classic example of what you're talking about, Steve, was when Obama was shoving health care down our throats, right? Mm. And he was saying, hey, Christians. Now, here's a guy who doesn't go to church, right? I mean, he
doesn't know the first thing.
He doesn't know the first thing. He was dragged into Reverend Wright's church by his wife so he could be baptized into the black community because all his friends were white. His parents are white. He's the whitest black guy in the universe, and Michelle made him a black guy. So at any rate, long way around the barn, Obama used this idea that, oh, you got to take care of your brothers. You got to give him your coat. You got to give him food. You got to do this. And he starts going through the Proverbs, right? And it's like, oh, I see. You're going to use Christianity against Christians. So instead of us voluntarily doing those things,
you're going to force us to.
You're going to force us to do it.
The purpose of our value system is that the government can't do it. It is that we can do it. Like it has to happen from the individual, right? Yes. So love thy neighbor is an individual. It's not government forced me to love my neighbor.
Of our free will.
Of our free will, right? And it only works.
John Locke.
It only works if you employ it, right? And you can't rely. It's so insane.
I know.
Yeah, but it is a
so
good
insane.
example of using your Christian tendencies and sympathies are militated against you. You know, to enact a compulsory public law to make you do things.
That's right. And not only that, so the disincentive structure that's been created as a result of this government overreach, it really does tamp down your individual giving incentive. You know, it's like if the government will just do it. You know, they're going to send in FEMA, or they're going to do this. You know, they'll do that. They'll, you know, it's like people don't think on that level anymore.
Right.
And
no, they don't.
I think the good news is it could come back almost immediately if you just get rid of this crap. I think human nature takes over, and if nothing else, if you don't believe in the Gospels and you don't believe in that in the Bible, go read it, because it's like a playbook on human psychology. You know,
it is.
Oh yeah,
it is all like reading metaphorically the stories, or even directly like these parables that they're talking about. That's not quite a parable, but it's similar. It's like it's a playbook for human psychological interaction.
Yeah,
and we would left to our own devices, we're quite capable of doing this without the Obamas telling us how to do it.
no question about it.
Or these people in Wisconsin.
And the poor were taken care of, and now donations to, these agencies, whatever it is, just pick one, St. Jude's Children's Hospital, or the Kiwanis, or the Knights of Columbus, or just go through the Red Cross. People are giving less to these organizations now because they figure, well, government's taking care of all this. I don't need to do that.
I don't need to do it.
So when United Way comes around and the employees check off, they're like, no, I don't think so.
They're like, no, because I'm seeing this 40% that you're taking already.
Yeah, to ostensibly do all this.
do all this, yes.
That used to be charity.
Yep.
So, yeah.
A
good example of what you guys are talking about is like, so I was watching a little bit of the Tube. I watched the football game. And Humana Healthcare is running this really hard. I mean, they're hammering this advertising campaign to a targeted audience of people who are eligible for both Medicare, okay, which is the people like me, geezers, but also people who are at the same time getting Medicaid, and these commercials, quite insultingly, in my opinion, roll out this long list of benefits that you can get for free. Free dental, free hearing tests, free eye tests, free this, free that. And the whole time you're just sitting there as a taxpayer saying,
there's nothing free.
I'm paying for all this stuff.
Right. What's free about any of it?
And Humana, a profit, their for-profit company, right, is trying to reel in people to go down there and get your Medicaid and get your Medicare. They want to see these rolls increased.
Of course they do.
Because
they're getting
paid. And the
paid.
rest of us are just like, well, I don't get all this crap for free. And they're, it's very targeted to those people. And you're just like, are there really that many people that in the middle of an NFL game, you're running an ad for people who are eligible for both Medicaid, which is supposed to be for destitute people.
If the one thing the
Medicare.
Private sector is good at, it's targeting the right people at the right time, right?
Kidding.
Because that's how they make their money.
So there's something there. Yeah, that's true. Well, it kind of, I noticed this ad as well, too, watching TV yesterday during some movies, but Amazon, which again, they're becoming a bigger player in Central Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
Does this
grocery stores, everything.
Right.
Yeah.
That now creating these warehouses or whatever, and then their
data centers.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
That they run this ad for a recruiting ad talking about, and it specifically says Central Ohio. So it's talking about find a great job at Amazon, because we all know that Central Ohio doesn't have the greatest job job opportunity, and it has this image of a terrible looking cornfield. And I'm thinking, so how are you playing well with us, Amazon, that you're showing a really bad image of Central Ohio, trying to recruit that we have very bad job opportunities in Central Ohio?
That's insane.
That's insane.
Right.
I mean, it specifically says
just like
Central
Biden.
Ohio, not Ohio, but Central Ohio.
Well, it's like when Biden came for the Intel groundbreaking, he said, there was nothing going on here. These were empty, quote, empty fields, unquote. Well,
Yeah,
they weren't
right.
empty fields.
No.
They were raising soybean and,
Yeah.
and winter wheat and corn.
Beans, wheat, and corn, right?
Wow.
And-
wow. My
People
jaw
in
dropped when I
Johnstown
saw
were,
that.
They were really ticked off over that.
Well,
These
sure.
are empty fields. Well,
Look,
actually, no, my
They
grandma.
had, they had quite a thriving community, in fact, right?
Yeah.
Without you, thank you.
Yeah.
It was a green field, and that's my big bitch with
Right,
these.
it's a green- yes.
Well, these corporate welfare
Right.
programs, and Ohio has given DeWine and the guys have given away the store, and they're still doing it. Then we're now up to like 22 major corporations coming out to Licking County, and and it's on our dime. So we're financing the schools, we're financing the roads, we're financing the sewers,
Right.
we're giving away
Anything public service.
we're giving
Yeah.
away the financing of they're not paying taxes and all this other stuff. So it's a big giveaway program, and my biggest problem is why aren't they going into brown and brownfield sites and rebuilding the infrastructure and putting the jobs where people
They're
already
taking
are.
over
They're taking over green fields.
green fields instead of brown, and there's plenty of brownfields around,
Oh my God! Right.
right? That the government screwed up last time.
That's right. And people on the near east side of Columbus, they could use those jobs.
Yes.
Now they're going to have to get on a COTA bus if they want to come out to Licking
they're
County.
They're not going to hire
That's
those
not
people.
and
No.
they're not going to hire those.
They're not going to
people.
hire those people.
No.
No
They're
chance.
They're going to import H-2B visa people and
Yep.
whatever.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
No,
Exactly.
it just is. It's complete BS.
Hey, this week is the 60th anniversary of JFK's assassination.
Yes.
And I heard an interesting statistic that only 29% of the people believe the Warren Commission's report. In other words, the other
I am not one of the 29%.
The other 71% believe that some other conspiracy element,
Well,
whether
no, believe it or not, but,
Like,
but I
yeah,
would
go
say
ahead.
that I would. Well, no, you finish.
well, just it's interesting that less than 1/3 of the country believes that Lee Harvey Oswald did this on his
But
own.
you I would say 75% of the country doesn't even know about this.
It's become lost history. You know?
Well, of course.
You could-
Even in my childhood, where were you when Kennedy got
If you
shot?
ask me what I know about
It's
that,
as remote as
that
Lincoln's
research or that
assassination.
Warden,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
The Warren report. See, I did a dive into it.
You know,
It's really interesting.
wow.
And it's the problem with it is the same problem that always results when the government gets involved and takes over, is because there's gaps, there are holes, and there are things they ignored and didn't publish, and there's still classified information. It's like we don't have transparency, and because whenever you don't have transparency, then you have distrust from the people, and that's why. Do I believe that Oswald? I have no idea, but I don't believe the Warren report. I think there's missing pieces of that caused me to want to question any conclusion. And this is just the lawyer in me, the defense lawyer in me. I know what an incomplete police report looks like. I see where the bodies are buried and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's like, wait a minute. I would want to know like 20 things just reading one page, and it's not in there.
Yeah.
And you can't tell me that I'm not the smartest guy in the room. Far from it. Somebody else knows this, and whoever investigated knows this, and they left it out. And you start to think, all right, that's where conspiracy theories grow.
Yeah.
And it's people aren't crazy. It's like it's sort of like COVID and all our government response to that. There was always a way to connect the dots to something far more sinister. And then I would always default. Is it gross incompetence? Is it something, a larger agenda to sort of take over the world? Or is it money? And it's probably all three.
And then you have Rob Reiner coming out of the podcast.
Oh my gosh.
Who killed JFK? I mean,
Meatball.
I love Rob Reiner in his lane.
Yeah.
He does some really funny
It's funny movies.
movies.
Right.
But dude,
He's
you're
a
in the
lunatic.
wrong lane on this one.
He's a lunatic.
Unless it's just
Like, what does he know about the Kennedy assassination? Anybody else would know.
Unless
Archie Bunker had it right. He's just a
He's
big
a meathead.
meatball.
Unless unless he's coming up with some sarcastic podcast that I really know.
Yeah.
It's like the Onion kind of podcast. But it's like, oh my god,
Well,
I
some of his movies are great, though.
oh my god, yeah.
Oh,
Stay in your lane, Rob. You're great.
I
Yeah,
love
exactly.
his dad even more. The late
Yes,
Carl.
Carl.
Reiner.
Oh my
Yeah.
god,
My
Carl,
God.
yeah.
Him and Mel Brooks, if you just put them in a room, like I would pay.
Yeah.
Just to
yeah.
hang out with them, both gone now. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
the two funniest Jews in Hollywood, let's face it. I mean, it's just
They
off the
were
hook.
great.
Well,
They
and
were
then
great.
throw.
Well, I
you
don't know. What's his name? I'm drawing a blank. The insult guy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
That's his name.
I'm stripping in gear, but
I know.
Yeah, I know who you mean. He was in Kelly's Heroes.
Oh, it's hilarious.
Oh my God. Yeah, exactly.
My favorite comedian maybe
absolutely.
ever.
Yeah.
What's it?
Oh my God.
I know. He's on the Tonight Show.
I was just talking about
every
him yesterday.
night.
Yeah.
Don Rickles.
Don Rickles, thank you. Yes.
Don Rickles, yeah.
The best.
Yeah.
And
The best.
you could do none of that humor now.
No.
I mean,
no.
that's Dave Chappelle level dangerous comedy.
He was
the stuff he would say.
There's a great special. It's worth watching. Anybody listening, you should go watch this. You can catch it on YouTube. It was like his sort of his tribute. I don't know if it was a birthday party or like a life career
a roast,
tribute.
maybe?
No, it wasn't a roast.
Dean Martin roast?
It's some of it was sort of roast-ish, but
Okay.
this is like later. He was really old at the time. It was right before his death. And everybody, all the Hollywood celebs were there that had worked with him.
Yeah.
And he gave this Rickles gave this speech at the end. And it's like, these like they have a stage identity, and then every now and then he sort of let open his true self.
Drop the mask.
It's cool. Yeah. And he just said, he gave the speech about his comedy. And he goes, I made fun of the blacks. I made fun of the Italians. I made fun of the Jews. I made fun of, like, he just listed them all.
Everybody. Nobody
the
was
mix
sacred.
and this and this. He goes, but I did it out of love. I love all of you. And it'll put tears in your eyes. I mean, and it showed that he used comedy to break the ice and talk about difficult things and bring people together. And the irony is, like, he was making fun of people for their ethnicity on all levels, but it actually brought all those groups together at the same time to laugh together. And it's like more of that, please, in the world.
Oh yeah, if you if you are able to laugh at yourself, you could accept other people much more easily.
That's right.
Because you realize I am faulty. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I have my biases and prejudices, and this comedian up on stage is bringing out all of that.
Because if you didn't, to not understand him, you'd think, oh my God, he truly hates everyone. It's like, no, he was to that extreme. He loved everyone with what he was doing, because what he was saying was true, because they were laughing. They were laughing at each other.
Imagine walking in, like, particularly the racial stuff.
They were stereotypes.
And he would walk in, like him making fun of Sammy Davis. And I mean, it's freaking hilarious.
I mean, the guy went to the extreme of making fun of Sinatra. You make fun of Sinatra,
Sinatra.
You're on a list that you're gone. Exactly.
It's like some of his Carson stuff.
But they loved him. The
But he
mafia loved him.
recognized how chilling that ideology was. Like you've got this. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't do this. So he just made fun of it.
Yeah.
And he brought people together to laugh.
That was the power of Richard Pryor's humor too.
Richard Pryor was very similar.
And that's why Dave Chappelle, with all his warts and faults, that's why he's popular.
Yep.
It's because those comedians went there. They went to places other people were afraid to go.
Yep. George Carlin.
Yeah.
Yes.
More on the political side of it.
Yeah.
But like taking down government.
Man, was
Like,
he
ahead of his
he
time.
Way
He was
ahead of his time.
very futuristic in his stuff. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yep.
All right. Well, where are we now? We probably got to get some nuggets in and find
the Ohio has its Islamic version of the Jesse Smollett case. They arrested this guy. Was it Cleveland or Canton? I'm not sure, but they arrested a guy who reported a non-existent crime, that he was the object of Islamic phobia and had been physically threatened and all that. The police looked into it, and he made it all up, just like Jesse Smollett. And, that's become a thing now it was a thing after 9/11. I remember this right after 9/11. Supposedly, rather than worrying about going after the terrorists in, wherever in Afghanistan and the Taliban and Al Qaeda, the impulse reaction by the left was, oh my God, following 9/11, there's going to be this huge counter, prejudice against Muslim Americans, and there just wasn't.
Well,
it just didn't happen.
This is
and
what
it's not
happens
happening now
when
either.
you make victimhood.
That's right.
The primary concern.
That's right.
Of life.
Yeah.
So your worth, your self-worth is now gauged on how much you've been victimized. Well, you're going to incentivize victimhood, right?
100%.
And Biden did this recently.
He's done it recently.
With trans deaths. Did you see any of this?
Oh, God.
So there was a big story a couple of weeks ago about how many trans people died in 2022 or 2023, and it was like 60 or something. But they didn't really say how they died. And the Daily Wire actually deconstructed this. They went through and looked at all some of the people on the list, and none of them died as a result of transphobia, crime.
Right.
Like several of them died because they were attacking police officers or involved in protests, and like one of them charged some cops with a weapon and was shot. I mean, it's like it was a complete farce.
Yeah.
But it's so important to be a victim that now people are
inventing
victimhood,
out of
and the
whole
government
cloth.
is ordaining people with victimhood, even when it's not even when it doesn't exist. I mean, and you would ask, why is Biden doing this? Votes, right? Political power.
Dearborn, Michigan.
Right.
He needs Dearborn, Michigan,
Yeah,
because
votes.
Michigan's up for grabs. And, this election next year, Michigan's very much up for grabs. And right now, many in the Islamic, a church or, a temple are definitely having a problem with our policy vis-a-vis Israel and where we're backing Israel. So he's counter-programming.
He's backpedaling.
He's backpedaling. That's
He's
exactly right.
backpedaling. But
and the D's are really split. You see the
Yeah.
see the
You're
squad. The squad's very pro-Hamas, right?
Yep.
And what Omar was censured in the House over this, and so
Rashida Tlaib up there just keeps stepping on her own toes, left and right and left and
Tlaib,
right.
not Omar.
Yeah,
right?
Ilhan Omar is.
She's at her elbow, but
she's got her own problems. But
she's got her own problems. She married her brother, whatever the hell it was.
yeah, well, he's a citizen now, though, right? I dare you to investigate that one.
But I mean, I think it's interesting that, on the heels of supposedly this wave of Islamophobia, a guy here in Ohio invents it, and he's being prosecuted for it. So good. I'm glad he is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, we probably ought to wrap it up. If you want to check out Common Sense Ohio backlog, you can just go to commonsenseohioshow.com. There's a website expertly created, now out there for all to see with every back episode. We also have video. That means you can check us out on Rumble, on YouTube. We might even have some Reels coming. I learned what Reels were recently. It's sort of like TikTok, but I refuse to get involved in TikTok. I just do.
For good reason.
For all sorts of reasons. But anyway, I think we're going to have some Reels coming out. So lots of great stuff at Common Sense Ohio Show as it grows exponentially throughout, spanning the globe with a constant variety of common sense. Dun, 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 dun. No agony of defeat here.
Ready for that music.
Anyway, we are Common Sense Ohio, brought to you by Harper Plus, coming at you right from the middle, at least until now on this Black Friday 2023.